folks didn't know, we made September Product Design Month, and James was the inspiration of this. He and I had chatted a little bit on the app going, hey, what are topics that are relevant and relevant maybe to both of us or the things that people might not realize? And we settled on big boxes, small companies. For folks who don't know, this is James Hudson, Druid City Games. Yay! For fantastic hits like Wonderland War and Tidal Blade. Now, where's the plural in those, James? I always screw it up. Is it Tidal Blades?
Yeah, it's Tidal Blades, and it's Wonderland's War, but nobody cares. Just say whatever.
Wonderland's War, Tidal Blades. The S's are always wandering around for me, and I knew that I was going to make a mistake. I had tried to think, I'm going to ask him, I'm going to get this right. So folks who are not familiar with you, James, give us the 3-minute spiel of your history in gaming.
Yeah, well, history in gaming, I'm an avid Blizzard fanboy. As you can see up behind me, I've got all the collector's editions of Warcraft and those sort of things, and that's where gaming really got started for me. But I had a group of friends that I raided with in Warcraft, and they invited me over to game night, and I said, that sounds awful. I don't like Monopoly. And they're like, but we have beer and we don't play Monopoly. And I was like, all right, whatever. I like you guys. I'll hang out with you.
So what year is this? This is like 2005, 2008?
No,
what are we doing?
This is no, I'm still I'm a golden age convert. I'm like a 2015, 2014, 2015, maybe somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Wow, you've done this so recently, James. My gosh.
Yeah. Power Grid was my drip that I needed more of that. Give me more, So yeah, and then I made Barnyard Roundup because I thought I could make a game because I have lots of hubris. And then a couple games after that, all of that hubris got knocked completely out, and so now we're somewhere, I think, in a healthy medium and making board games now.
Well, that's fair. I'm working on currently a designer diary for BGG. Eric had asked me to write one for Conquest Princess, and there are so many moments of hubris, and that is probably the first topic for today's small companies, big boxes, is hubris. The number one thing that it takes for tiny companies to try to make big games is, I can do that.
Yeah, I think that's any creative, right? There's some amount of hubris there where you're like, I think I can do this thing. And some of it's, a sprinkle of hubris, a sprinkle of courage, or whatever you want to, or naivety. There's a whole mix there that kind of makes up the situation. But once you kind of get the taste for creating, man, it feels good, especially when you make something that resonates with people. Like Redbeard says, he's got Barnyard Roundup. Let's go. I hope you like. Yeah,
Pat's a fan.
Like lying to your kids, because family bluffing game. That's you gotta love it. I don't say you lie to your friends. I say you learn your kids' tales.
It's important to figure out where you fit in the gateway to hobbyist perspective. And when did you learn where you are most comfortable for creating? And when did you decide, I think big boxes are almost exclusively for hobbyists. Even if somebody is like a gateway nut and they want the super expensive, Catan, Lego version, whatever it is, I still think that is for hobbyists. Where did you find yourself on the spectrum, and when did you realize that there was an entire continuum for making games and the business models for them?
Yeah, I think for me, Blood Rage was one of those first ones. It was like, ooh, I like all the shinies, all the toy factor, the big box feel. The real toy factor kicked in on that one for me. And just in general, making them, gosh, I just like making immersive worlds. And what I found is I spend way too much time in the narrative and the theme and the backstory of the lore. So much so that I had to cancel one campaign in Bloodstone because we wrote a novel. We literally wrote a novel, and I spent all the updates sharing this incredible lore and world building, and people were like, "We don't care. We just want to know about the game." And I'm like, "But we wrote all this cool stuff." And
That is definitely going to be one of the lessons for effort versus MSRP versus calendar time. You have three things that you are spending, and calendar time also plays into release schedule and convention time as well. So the great thing about let's talk about the upsides for a big box. The number one upside for a big box is you can really make it happen on a convention level or on a social ads level if you have a big box, because that 10% for marketing goes really far when the box is rather large. You also need a smaller community, and so by individual members, you need less to get that critical mass for that successful first 3 days. Those are the awesome things about a big box. The spending ceiling is much higher. The amount you can invest in a conversation with a person is a lot more, and all those things really translate well to a big box. So, Swirl or Die is a fantastic game. We make this, but it's like $13 now. At $13, I have to give so many demos in a convention hour to make that happen. It's almost insane.
yeah, and the costs are higher. So I mean, a lot of times it's percentage based, but especially when it comes to crowdfunding, I feel that the audience that's on crowdfunding, they're not looking to buy small box games via crowdfunding. They really prefer getting those big box experiences, and what else am I getting for my money? And smaller games, there's only so many stretch goals and extra bits you can pump into a smaller box game, right? So it kind of aligns itself better for that medium to upper box kind of project size.
For folks who don't know, let's talk a little bit about the experience of crowdfunding for a big box. All right, a big box has lots of opportunity to upgrade components and to add things into the box. Okay, give me some examples from some of your projects where you were very excited about this stretch goal. These things happened, or these were stretch goals you had planned in advance, or you had hoped at least to get to.
So this is we've opened up Pandora's box here a bit, can of worms, whatever analogy you prefer. So I think there's a perception that stretch goals are fake when it comes to crowdfunding. Hey, you already had all those things planned. They were going to be in the game anyway. And so this is definitely one of the things that I have a really strong passion about talking about and educating about. There is some truth to that. We do plan out the stretch goals.
You have to.
If you don't, you're a dummy.
You can't have quality stretch goals that people would want to have in the box without foresight, play testing, planning, and at least some level of art direction, right?
Absolutely.
You can't have that, right?
Absolutely. And so what we find is you're fighting this narrative that people think they're fake or they're artificial, and you've taken things out of the game that were going to be in the game. You're artificially releasing them. But it is true because they are planned for the game. The thing that the nuance, right? There's a nuance to it. If my project, let's say Wonderland's War for an example, right? There's so many of those items, the components that just, if we were going straight to retail, we weren't doing a crowdfunding, you kind of have to do what we call hedging your bets, right? Because you don't know how many people are going to be interested in the game. So you make, I don't want to say the minimum or the least viable option, but you definitely don't spend super heavy on the components, because then that also takes your price up and it makes things difficult. I think CMON gets a bad rap in this category, and I'm definitely not going to bat for CMON. They've definitely made lots of mistakes, at least in my eyes, in the way that they've done some things, but they make some great games. I got several of their games right up here behind me. But what I mean by that is, if a game let's take the same project. One path, it goes just straight to retail. One path, it goes through crowdfunding. The game will not look the same, right? It won't have the same content. It will be different products. And so if you like a big experience, you like the big box, then supporting companies, whether it's a small company like Druid City who only has 1 to 2 employees, or if it's CMON who has 75 to 80 employees, the product will look different. Doesn't matter how big the company is or isn't, right?
All right, so let's talk about a couple of things that you said. And let's start way at the beginning with people said. It's very important when you talk about vocal parts of your community or of the gaming community at large to identify that those aren't actually the mass of people. Like, they are a very vocal group that you will have to engage with and hopefully win over, but they are not the mass of people who are going to support your project. So I very much think it's important for everybody, especially in our age of technology and thinking about building a game company or community, to not make adversarial relationships between yourself or anybody else in gaming. So understand, playtesting is just going to be a thing, or people's gut reactions to a thing. And these are also things they might not say to you in person or say after they've had a good night's sleep, instead of like doom scrolling on BGG at like 1 a.m. And what did I end up trolling? Like, but these are all.
Yeah. And you never know what people have going on in their lives that also make them upset that day. And so I try to obviously take a deep breath when I'm in response, because sometimes people come in hot, and you're like, you would not talk to me this way if you were standing in front of me. I am not Amazon, right? Like, you're not talking to a corporation. And that's, I think, something for even at the highest level. Okay, let's remove Asmodee from the conversation. Pretty much everybody else is just, we're a niche industry, right? Like, you're dealing with a small
even
company.
Companies that are large with like 26 employees, like Chip Theory, their fan base is actually relatively small considering the amount of money that they're generating. Like, they have between 8,000 and 10,000 diehards, and that's a lot considering how expensive their games are, right? Yeah. Like, if you look at something like Kingdom Death Monster, that's even smaller group of people giving an even more enormous amount of money. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the next important point that James made, which was business model. When you are picking your audience and your project, you are picking an audience or project you're picking a project or business model for an audience. Yeah. So understanding their expectations is critically important. So I always tell people, if they ask, treat crowdfunding people like their own community. They have very specific ideas of what should happen. And a retailer and a retail audience are also two different groups. And you should also treat them separately. Yeah. So when you have projects, I know like Kylie from Games Unlimited is like, please do not come at me with your crowdfunding project.
Well, and one of the things, Seppy, that you just said there is where some of this friction comes from, right? Because retailers, and then backers through crowdfunding, they both want your product, but they both want it in a different format. But typically, it's much easier just to make one SKU, one thing. So that's where in the past, when I was at Skybound, we would make a deluxe edition, we make a retail edition, and you're trying to serve both. But then it still creates this friction in a lot of places, because you've got a version so this person's like, if I'd known you were going to make a retail version, I'd have rather saved the $25. I don't really care about your minis.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
And so for me, in my example, now that I've moved away from Skybound, I don't make retail editions anymore. Like, with me, you're just going to get the big and juicy. And if you don't like that, then I'm just not a creator that you're going to want to support. And that's okay, right? Because I kind of want to make stuff the way I want to make it. And I enjoy making it the way I like to make it. And I like to talk to the people who enjoy playing the games the way that I like to make them. I really don't want to get into comments and have to constantly justify why I added this meeple or used wood or, like for the most part, I don't mind sharing behind the scenes, but it's more like this is the way I envision this game being played on the table. This is what gets me excited. It's a siren's call out to whoever feels the same way.
All right, so you're giving too much gold at once, James. We got to take moments to interact with the chat and dissect some of the things that you're saying. So Tabletop Hero wanted to know, why not sell the components separately? And the answer is you do a lot of the time. You give a scaled version so that people can get the level of excitement, or the level of game they have to match their excitement. The best thing about crowdfunding versus a retail environment is this is shared at conventions, you are allowed to give a hobbyist the level of excitement that they want. You can let them go as far in supporting you as they are comfortable doing, okay? It is not just one and done. So if you are a small company, and this is to the core of today's topic, small companies with big boxes. And by the way, my teaser for this video, I couldn't stop giggling, James. I apologize. Like, my level of professionalism was like, I keep on saying big boxes.
I like them and I cannot lie. Well, I mean, and to Tabletop Heroes comment there, it's not see, a lot of these questions come out of like, isn't it just so simple to do X, right? But when you pull the curtain back, you're like, there's a lot of times I'm asked, can you give us this thing to go along with the game? And you're like, well, maybe, but I have to have a minimum number of people that are interested in adding that item, because when I go to the factory and I'm like, I need to make a play mat, they're like, cool, the minimum amount that we make is 1,000. You're like, all right, well, I've only got 175 people who said they want it. So what do I do with the other 825?
If you're going to make a short run of it, you're going to like, okay, this thing is a specialty boutique item only for the people who really, really want it. And you let people know. It is very important to be transparent with why things cost the way they do and what you're hoping to do with those. Now,
and that's typically what we're on the back end. That's what we're juggling, right? Like, oh, we would love to give everybody everything they want. Like, I'm looking right over here at Tidal Blades all the stuff. I think there was like 13 different items on that, because people were like, we want sleeves, we want dice, we want, yeah. And I was like, I hear you. I love it. And being very transparent, right? I don't mind. That's why we do these things and why we do crowdfunding. Every SKU that's not the board game has a better profit margin than the board game, right? So on our end, as people are like, A, we want to give you what you want. B, we make more money on those items. So everybody wins. Yay. Except in those instances, what you're talking about, where the boutique, then if I have to get a much smaller, if I have to go, I can't use my normal factory. I have to go to, say, like a Game Craft or somebody local, right? The price of the item might quadruple or 6x, 7x to what I could get done at the factory, right?
Let's talk about multipliers. That is a great point. All right. So everybody, who's joining us today, welcome to the Wednesday Board Game Live. Our special guest is James Hudson from Druid City Games. And today we are talking about big boxes and tiny companies. So what the best use for industry time is understanding the mechanisms of how business models get done. Okay. And I use a lot of words and I just sort of saladed them together. But the normal multiplier for a game to get into retail, to be successful for all parties concerned, is normally 5x at a minimum. And 5x means the cost of manufacturing it to getting it to your warehouse in the States must cost you a fifth of what the MSRP is going to be. Okay? When you do something that is either retailer direct or consumer direct, those numbers can change dramatically, right? You can suddenly do 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 5. And that suddenly makes much more a much more financial sense. You can pass that directness to the people who want the game. And that is really the magic of crowdfunding, especially if you get to any level of size.
Yeah. You've again, Pandora's box has been opened again. I think at this point now, Seppy, we're just doing a whole panel on manufacturing and making
We
a board
are.
game. But
That's
one
what
of
we
the
are always
things,
going to do, James. That is what we're doing.
so one of the things that I've actually done, if people want to go check, if you're nerds and you really like to get into minutia,
Nerds.
I actually made a forecasting video on my YouTube channel, and the whole point of it is, a lot of first-time creators don't think about profit. If you don't shoot for at least a minimum of a 30% profit on your project, right, then you don't have the funds to support that product line long term. We see this when people make a game. It is a surprise hit. It goes out. It sells out everywhere. Oh my God, we've got a hit. Well, people want more. I don't have any money to buy anymore from the factory. I'm literally out of money because I didn't make any on the first run. But then they're all excited and they order more. And then they get it, and it takes 6 to 8 months to get it here because they got to make it. It's got to get on a boat. It's got to come over here. Well, then we see sometimes that the hunger for that game has died. Everybody's moved on. Cult of the new. And now you've got 5,000 copies in a warehouse that you thought you were going to sell. So it's really, and also, making a profit helps you pay yourself to like keep the lights on and stuff. That's very important. And to fairly pay your partners.
You should think about how you're going to make a living so your dream doesn't kill you. This is the thing that I often tell people.
Well, and sometimes people are moonlighting, right? They're moonlighting. They're working a day job, but they're moonlighting as a creator. But and they're like, I just want to see my name on a box. Hey, I get you. I feel you. I feel you there. However, if you don't make a profit, you'll never want to do it again, right? Because then it just creates all this stress and anxiety because you don't have the money to take care of things properly. And now you're like, do I dip into my savings? Because now we're short on money to ship things out. And it just gets ugly really quick. And so in that forecast, in that video, and I've talked about this quite a lot through my Kickstarters and backers, I really kind of go into each category and kind of at least talk about how I plan each of those categories out, how much we kind of forecast to spend in those areas, what our top end is on what we can spend on a game versus what we have to charge for it, shipping, fulfillment, art budgets, shipping subsidizations because people think we're Amazon and we should ship for free. All of that stuff's in there. And at the end of the day, once you pile it all in there and you say, this is what I'm going to charge, this are all the fees, this is all my costs, then how much money do I have left over if I sell this many games? And is it at least a 30% profit margin? And if not, oof.
Let's talk about two things that you touched on tangentially in there. Okay. So price is a barrier, and it is just something that a number of people are going to have an issue with, and a number of people just won't. And you're trying to find the sweet spot so that the people who are excited are going to continue to be excited about what they ended up getting. So for people who are moonlighting or just starting out, it is often possible that you are investing in building your community, and so that you are not able to make that next jump. But you should always be thinking about where that next jump is. Like, when does this next one have to be profitable? So to tag on to something that you said earlier, it is always a good idea in the history of crowdfunding that if you run out of your initial print run, don't just order it. Don't just get a loan to make the second one. You should instead make a crowdfund with something plus to happen so that the people who helped get you there, they get something new. And also you are not on the hook for a game that ultimately you have not put the time into the community to keep it exciting.
Yeah.
So that is what crowdfunding really is at its core.
I just did that with One Lens War. I just did that, right? Like we knew that we needed to do a reprint. It's a very costly game to make, and we made a very small box expansion so that we were also excited about the things that we were working on for the expansion, right? So it wasn't just a money grab. Um, right? And so you have to plan those things out. Hey, David has a great question in the comments. What if the games cost too much to add profit? Well, David, I'm gonna get this is gonna be one of those hard talks, buddy. This is gonna be one of those hard talks.
Don't be mean to David. I love
No,
David.
that's not me. It's not me. It's just a hard talk of you have to make it in a way that it's profitable, right? You have to put the guardrails on yourself. So for me, I usually will not go over 20%. So if a game costs $100, that I'm going to sell it for $100, that means I have $20 to make that game at manufacturing. That's not all the other costs. That's not the other stuff. But for me, 20%, that's the like absolute highest, right? Because if I go over that, I am just eating into profit, right? So once you give yourself some guardrails and say, it makes you make tough choices, right? Like, oh, I really wanted this metal coin that lights up at night, and it does this fun thing, but it costs $17 to put in the game. It'll make you go, I don't really need that to be in the game. It doesn't have to be that component. And if you start with that, then you go, okay, well, if it has to be, if 20% is the top, then it also pushes your cost up. Like, I really want to be able to sell this game for $75, but they're coming back to me with a $20 cost. That needs to be $100.
And it gets even more complicated if you put in things that are actually variable. Like Princess took a massive hit because the second shipping crisis crushed me. I absolutely got it was $3,800 March 1 to ship a 40-foot container. It was more than $12,000 to ship a 20-foot container last month.
Yeah.
And with a box this big, that is like 2 unit. That is insane. That is insane. Like, it has crushed the profit margin for that game to the point where I'm just like,
Yeah, Seppy, we had a nightmare scenario for the first run of Wonderland's War because it was during the pandemic when containers went bonkers, right? And
they went up to $24,000.
We paid more than that per container to ship because then we got put in this weird place, right? We're like, well, we're just going to wait to see, if the prices come down. But then our manufacturer's like, well, we don't have anywhere to store this enormous game that you printed 15,000 copies of. We will have to move it to storage, and the storage is not weather secure. And then we're like, so our games could get wet and damaged or moldy? And they're like, it could. We don't think it will, but it could. And then you're like, well, then if we don't ship it, then we lose our print run. We could potentially lose our print run. There's no guarantee. And we're also paying to store it. I mean, everything was bad. So then we just decided to eat it, right? It completely wiped out all the profit of the first run and some and more, right?
It
like actually lost money.
Stop using the P word. Because what you're looking at is like a safety net for making it happen and an investment in the community going forward and the title going forward.
Sure.
This 20% isn't money that James is going to go and get himself a new Tesla. This is not what James is going to do.
We're umbrella drinks on the beach. Yay!
Boat drinks. Do people still call them boat drinks, James? Boat drinks.
I like that. Boat drinks. Boat drinks.
Yeah, but like understanding that your business model and your margins, and this is why I usually call this margins, has to be there to take those kinds of crazy hits for unexpected things. So even if something goes horribly wrong, can you still deliver on the project? And can you still make it worth people's time? And that was a super close thing for Princess. Like the MSRP for that game, for Princess, not to backers. I'm not making backers pay this. They get what they get. But it went up $15.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just this year. If you want that, like, if I get to print it again, who knows? Like, that is just the reality of it. It went from an $80 game to $95 game because of the short print run and because the shipping just like $8,000 more per shipping, divided that by 1,500 games, boom.
And I think a thing that, like when David was asking about the costs, I think a great example when you go back even in my games, when you look at Grim Forest, we put way too much in that box and didn't charge enough, right?
Yeah.
And the again, that's why we stopped reprinting it. It's why it's not on the market, because again, it, it's more complicated than just add $10 more to it, right? Because it's already a $50 family game. That's already, at least in my eyes, from what the knowledge that I know, the top end somebody's going to willing to pay for a family type game, right? $50 is the very most. So if it went up to 60 to 65, where it probably needs to be, then it doesn't sell. So that's why you put the guardrails on there. And so someone early on should have been over there slapping my hand and saying, no, you can't put all those trays in there, because all those trays, while they look cool, and all those components, while they look awesome, you're making an $80 game, and that's not what people are going to pay for a family game.
Let's talk about this. Everybody, welcome to live. Today's topic is small companies with big boxes, and we're talking about picking an audience, understanding what an audience needs, and that can be a price point for them, is very critically important for moving forward with your project. So if you're going to make an everyone title or a family white title, understand that it's got to be $40 or less, play in 45 minutes or less, seat up to 5 people, and be able to learn as you play. Boom. Those are the requirements to make it happen. You should also have an approachable theme. Let's take some of these questions first. Let's do David's question, and let's do Teresa's question after that.
Absolutely. By the way, you guys need to like double tap the screen and hit that heart. I know this sounds very YouTube-y, but it really does help. That's the only way the algorithm sends this live out to more people. So give the tap, give Seppy a rose. He's making great content here and does it consistently all the time. Hold on, I can give you a rose. Boom. Bam, rose,
wow, easy. Wow, thanks, James.
I'm the
How do you find
gifter.
the balance of setting the MSRP versus the reality of what it costs? The reality is, how close are you with your community, and have you set the expectation that they trust you and things cost what they need to cost? Fight in a Box, we like to do limited edition boutique items that everybody knows that you get it when you can get it, and we are only making a handful of them. And so this is one of the things that we can end up doing. These are super nice. This is Mouse Cheese, is super deluxe version, and it's not for everybody. It is those folks, like there's 250 of those. They end up getting hand numbered and hand signed, and that is a thing that we ended up doing. For the more price conscious folks, we then made the most overproduced $13.50 in the history of gaming, which is Mouse Cheese Cat Cucumber. So we ended up tackling both ends for the collectors and for the retailers, and understanding that you needed to work people up to this kind of box by setting expectations in previous instances. So David, to answer your question, how do you make this happen? You do it by building a track record. Like John from Terrible Games yesterday said, or last week said, how do you make it in the industry? You just stay in the industry until everybody wants you to succeed. The industry is very small, and we do help each other out. Okay, so Teresa says, when I tell non-gamers that most board games are around $50, their eyes bug out. And that is 100% the case. Price is an expectation. Where and how they get it. If you are competing on price as an indie, you will never be able to compete with people who have large print runs and who are already established. Small companies cannot. They used to say when I was an adult and working in corporate America, competing on price is a race for the bottom. And it does not help to set your audience expectation that you are constantly talking about price. because when you constantly talk about price, people value everything based on how cheap it is versus how cheap something else is. And you will never be able to make your life or your title successful if that's the case.
We're going mobile. We're going off road here to help illustrate your point. You know, I've already got a lot of this feedback on Title Blade. Where's the box? There it is. Title Blades 2, right? They're like,
yeah,
it
looks beautiful, James.
Thank
so
you.
Exciting.
Hold on, I'll bring it to the table. It's a chunky one.
Are we getting out our chunky boys? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. And people instantly are like, well, you know, this game gets compared to, say, Jaws of the Lion, right? And they're like, but Jaws of the Lion has almost as many scenarios in it, but it's like half the price, right? But to your point, Seppy, you know, they're just not the same project, right? Like it's a different situation. This box weighs 13 pounds.
What?
It's a 13-pound game. There's so much stuff in here.
What's the total dimensions on that, James?
It barely fits in a Kalex square, so like 12.5 by 12.5 inches.
Yeah. So we have the same box size front. How deep is it?
No, like just 4.5, 5, something like that.
Oh, we're in the same size box.
But
mine is only 6 pounds, James. I feel bad for me.
Well, when you start having things like the dual layer player boards, and there's a bunch of them.
Is that the standard edition is 13 pounds, or is that the all-in version?
So the way I did it this time, because I got so many complaints about the Title Blades 1 box, because I made a coffin box. The base game is just this. This is just the base game, and then the deluxe components has their own box with the minis and everything, and so. You can slide them together. It makes it the same size as the first Title Blades Deluxe Edition, if you want to like be able to stack them up. But when you start having things in here that have, you know, just lots of this paper's heavy.
My gosh, it's spiral bound. How many pages is that?
This is our scenario book. This is 130 pages.
Wow.
So,
how many scenarios are there, James?
There's 21. You won't necessarily play all of them if you only go through it once. But I mean, there's more books in here, right? And we also the way that we did the maps, I'm really proud of. I know this has turned into a show and tell, sorry.
No. If you can't show off your big box to me, James, I don't want to live in that universe.
The maps for the scenarios are spiral bound as well. And one of the cool things that we did for this game is we don't, you know, there's a lot of people have done this before, right? You have a map book, you open it up, and then it has the spiral bound that goes down the middle. We didn't want to do that. We have multiple map books like this, right? And then you push them. You can't see it here with me holding this up, but it'll be like they come together, and there's no break in the art because the spirals are on the outside.
Oh, nice.
Go ahead.
Somebody has an amazing question. Do you take into account the weight of the game when figuring out your MSRP and not just the components? You do. There is an entire, like, if I was going to have somebody give a panel to help, like, would-be crowdfunders, I would have John Nephew from Atlas Games explain worldwide shipping from the U.S. It is a fantastic way to do this. I don't know if people know, like the first, 6 editions of Root were also fulfilled by Atlas. There's a science to working vendors, how many packages you do, how things come across, and all that logistically then ends up being another factor that then you do mail costs, like how much does it send to this package for why and how, and that's all of a consideration for when you are figuring out your MSRP. Because if you want your game to be under a certain price point that you can either offer free shipping or it's eaten in the cost, that guy's got to be under 10 pounds. Like 10 pounds is the magic cutoff for so many of the shippers for fulfillment.
Yeah, a lot of it, like in the industry, we'll call that the landed cost, right? That
Right.
includes all your manufacturing and the cost to get it over there. And most of the times, your manufacturer can give you an estimate of how many games they can get on a pallet. Then we know how many pallets we can get into a container. And so then you extrapolate all that math, and you're like, you probably pad that a little bit because you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to lose money there. And then
And
that's how
one
you.
key factor that they do not tell you, in some containers, there are tall pallets and then there are short pallets.
Yeah.
And so when you have 20, you get 10 tall pallets and 10 short pallets. And then they each have weight considerations based on their total volume.
Yeah. And all that kind of goes into to answer your question about the MSRP and the weight of the game. But like going back to just quickly on all the things that go in to make the price of a game, like every game's got its own set of art, and this game has almost 700 cards. Buckets
That's
of.
crazy. What's the MSRP on that again?
This one's $100. Yeah, it's $100.
Wow.
Tons of dice. There's wooden bits everywhere. And it's just one of those things where it's like, could I have made this cheaper? Yes, but it wouldn't have these spiral bound books for maps. It would be a much cheaper solution.
And that's only consumer direct from you. Is that correct? You can't get this retail or no?
Well, there were some retailers back when I ran this campaign. This. We don't want to talk about the timing of my project, Seppy. I'm not exactly always on time.
I am the opposite. I am always on time, James. Yes.
I've never, ever hit a deadline, Seppy. And honestly,
I was early on 3 of them, and I've been on time on 2 others. This latest one, depending on how you wiggle that, because we added another thing, it's either going to be 3 months early or 3 months late. So it's on time.
There you go. Yeah, it ends up just being a thing where for me, I'm probably a bit of a perfectionist, and I spend a little bit too much time poring over stuff and trying to make because there's one thing that I'm deathly scared of when I do these projects is there being a mistake that then I have to send something back out to 10,000 backers, right? Oh, now you've got to remake something. You've got to mail it to 10,000 people. Again, I know you don't like this word. Profit margin gone.
Yeah,
right?
let's call it margin because your margin disappears.
The thing is, there's nothing wrong with profit, right? It has been demonized through these greedy, nasty corporations who profiteer us, right? And they price gouge us. So obviously, we could have a whole live just on that. Happy to do that as well. But I can promise you, small companies in board gaming are not profiteering off of you. They're, I see it on comments sometimes. They're just highway robbery. And like, no, ain't nobody driving Lamborghinis in the board game industry. Okay,
no.
not happening.
No.
But there's a lot of things that go in to make a game its price. And for me, we spent so much time. Where to go? This 130 pages of the scenario book. I mean, there's so much narrative in here that we wanted to make an experience when people go, holy crap, this is not a generic fantasy. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill tropesy story. And I hope that when people play the game and they get through all the scenarios, they go, I went on an adventure. They took me somewhere. And I feel for these characters. I want to see Dust and Cayman on Netflix, in a series because I love the characters. We don't get that in every game,
It is hard. When you're on the big box adventure, there are so many factors that you have to look at after. But one of the most dangerous is, am I pouring love into an area that I'm excited about, but that doesn't move the needle for my business? It sounds like you, James, you and I have the same proclivity. Obviously, you're massively more successful than I am, but the I want to pour more into this, like, when do I stop, is a real question, and it is something that you should be thinking about when you're trying to maintain your margins. Maintaining your margins for unpredictability so that your community can continue and so that your game company doesn't kill you is very, very, very important.
Seppy, I see this in a lot of new creators a lot, where we'll see a comment where they're like posting about their thing that they're about to launch. And they're like, we've worked on this for 5 years, right? At the end of the day, that means absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm glad you did. Hope that means it's a well fleshed out, awesome game, right? But what I mean by that is if Eric Lane can make a game in 15 minutes and it's just as good or better, you pouring in 5 years doesn't, again, like you said, it doesn't move the needle. It's whether or not it's you're checking all the boxes of, is it fun, is it well done, and most importantly, is the rule book good so I can understand how to play your game.
Let me take what you said and put it in a kinder way.
I need you to just follow me around and do that all the time.
It does matter. It'll matter to your super fans, the people who are really there, who want you to succeed, and the people who are at the core of your audience. But at a certain point, your game has to defend itself with just the things that it has. Like, people always say, Seppy, you would sell so many more games if you were able to be present in every one of your boxes. Because if you've played one of my demos, you see that I care a lot about giving an expert level demo. I care about the world, the people around. It's a real experience, right? But at the end of the day, that same problem arises. Can your game speak for itself when no one else is around? So it's not about care or don't care. It is not about what you've done for it. And that narrative is very important. Like, no place is that narrative as important as on this app, because being your genuine self is the currency for this flavor of social media. But can your game defend itself without people telling people that you did all these things? And you would like people to buy your game because they're excited to get it to the table more than they're excited to buy your game and then have in their collection because they want you to succeed.
Yeah, we tend to have rose-colored glasses when we definitely flavor the experiences. And so you said something there. Does the game stand on itself? It's one of the things about halfway through my career so far. I said we have to start playtesting via a cold rulebook teach. Like, here's the rule book.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not guiding it, because I flavor that experience for the playtester way too much when I do it. Did you know when we were creating this monster, then we had this input from this backer, and people love that stuff, and then it gives them a more positive outcome, as opposed to, here's the rule book, please read it, please go on to TTS and play this for me and give me feedback. And you get more true feedback to, can the game stand on its own? And very importantly, when you've goofed up the rule book, or there's something that's not in there that's very clear, because again, we have blinders on, right? We're too familiar with this stuff. It becomes apparent when 3 or 4 people say, hey, this section of the rule book's really not explaining to me how you want me to do the thing. And if we don't have those moments, then we send it out the door, right? And people get it and they have a bad experience because the rulebook doesn't facilitate gameplay.
Right. The rulebook is an incredibly deep time sink that you can pour any amount of time into and people will still not be unhappy, and it doesn't necessarily move the needle. You can only fail in your rulebook. You cannot actually ever increase your appeal of your game with your rulebook. Like, people aren't doing searches, game with best rulebook, let me buy that one. Like, no one is doing that.
There's not a best rulebook award out there on all the content creators.
I wish.
Rulebook of the year.
Like, if people wanted to crowdfund companies that always deliver early or on time, they should do mine. Like, that's a feature.
Oh, yeah.
These are things that are, if you don't check that box, it's a negative, but if you do check that box, you don't win points. Now, to your point, I did have one of my super fans call me on the phone like last weekend and say, can you give a 3.5 minute squirrel or die demo? Because I want people to like this game and I'm going to butcher it.
Nice.
And I'm like, put me on speaker, Wayne. I'll do this for you. Like, one of the major features for being a fan or a community member in for a small company, no matter what the size of the box is, they can give you the level of attention where you matter. Like I know the twins' names of some of our super fans, like Henry and Aaliyah. People send me Christmas cards. Like, I keep up on like their lives. It is a feature of this kind of stuff. And
Seppy, I've got a Discord channel that people pop into the Discord and ask rules questions, or and I'm there to answer. I get that notification on my phone. I'm answering rules questions.
Oh, I can't do that, James. You are way more. I cannot put Discord on my phone. I would never sleep.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
It would wreck my life. It would wreck my life completely. I have Discord in a very specific place.
I hear you. Hey, Plumpy Thimble. Plumpy Thimble's here. One of my favorite content creators in board gaming. Plumpy Thimble makes some of the best skits. So go ahead, click on that little face right there, people watching, and go follow that man. And he said, good rule books don't get a lot of attention, but bad ones sure do. And that is exactly what you're saying, Seppy.
They do. Like, there's a lot of understanding how you elevate voices or you turn up energy is also part of the community building. So to start like recapping some of the critical points for small company, big boxes, things that you need to think about. Let's talk about some of our favorite points from this, James. Number one, you say, make sure that you pay attention to margin and you give yourself enough margin to support the title as it grows. Okay.
Absolutely.
That is critical. If you plan for best case financial situation all the time, you will be so sorely disappointed that that your dream will crush you to death. What is your next favorite point from our time together, James?
Oh gosh, we went the gambit. We started on the, I don't know. I feel like we've done a whole summit here. People just learned on this 49-minute live how to make games from start to scratch.
Did they, or did you and I just like complain?
Well, I think we just rabbit trailed a lot, which I am very good at. That's also one of the reasons why I think panels, when you go to some of these panels at conventions, they're useful, but also not, because you're just getting a lot of anecdotal stuff from people, and that's good to hear. But I don't sometimes walk away with anything substantial that I can take back home and like put into practice, right? And I've tried to pitch them like, let me do my forecasting panel. Like, that's all we'll cover for an hour. Let's just go over how you build a forecast, how you budget for certain things, because especially when you're a first-time creator, it's just so easy to go, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do it differently. And then these different lanes just get blown out of proportion, right? Like your art budget out of whack.
Two things. When you go to panels and you see somebody say something that's interesting, it's food for thought, and it's somebody that you can then go check in with to have that conversation. That's a great way to have a panel. Number two, at things like Gamma or Protospiel or something that might actually have like people talking about the mechanisms that get games done, I try to be very specific when I'm on a panel. Like, I did one at Gamma, which was interviewing and hiring for your retail board game store.
Yeah.
And it was filled, James. Like,
oh, was it really? That's awesome.
It was filled. People are like, you do that? I'm like, yes, absolutely. This is you need to treat interviews like the actual job and stop treating interviewing like its own skill. There are plenty of people who are fantastic or terrible at interviewing, and their relationship to that job has absolutely nothing to do with it. But that's sort of an example.
Okay, Seppy, you asked for specific things on the recap. I think we started here. Know your audience. Know the audience that you want, right? And be okay if you're making a game. It's a big, chunky box. I'm not trying to go after people who love party games with this, right? And that's okay. That there's party games for party people. There's dungeon crawl, heavy narrative, dungeon crawls for people who want that, and that's what I've made this for. And I think it's okay if you're trying to make something for literally everyone, that's a really hard thing to do. Or maybe it's not even possible, right? So just know who you're trying to make the game for and then try to talk to those people.
All right. And this is very important. And this could actually be the next time I have you back on the live. When you pick an audience, understand where that audience is and then where you want to lead them. There's a lot of arguments that Princess is too far removed because of all the strangeness that in and around it is. Like, it is an everyone title, as in the fact that women are included in the everyone title. Well, hobbyists and GameFound in particular, like platforms, don't have a massively disproportionately male audience. All right.
Yeah.
So, and there's a large group of people who say, hey, because it tries to include everybody, it doesn't include me. Number one. Okay. But simultaneously, the Barbie movie and Everything Everywhere All at Once was for everybody. And, but knowing that the audience of women gamers, they have a specific way that they buy games. And it is very different than other places. The mass of gamers now is female majority, if you didn't know. And the place that these gamers are getting their games are places they feel comfortable, which are Barnes and Noble, Target, so forth and whatnot. Like, if you hadn't noticed, like, the internet isn't always kind to women trying to do new things. And so there's a lot of hard places for them to go. You know, conventions is now swinging in an area where you'll see women more and more present. In tabletop in general, the place that has only gotten some level of representation of equality is RPGs. RPGs is much more, has much more women in it. Tabletop is definitely coming along. As far as representation for diversity in games, that has also progressed a lot. But understanding that you're up against that when you make a title is part of the business model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've tried to do the best job that I could, and I've definitely made mistakes, and I've definitely been called out on those mistakes. And I think one of the things that you have to be able to do is just go, now that I know better, I'll do better. And then you just kind of apply that learning going forward. And, again, this is probably a whole nother live in its own subject, but the quick elevator pitch of diversity in board games and diversity in general is not a bad word. It's not a bad thing. Diversity is incredibly good because our stories get out of these same tropesy perspectives that have always kind of been, pushed by a certain group of people who are in power to make things. And when you involve more cultures and more people, then your stories are better, your games are better, your products are better.
It's like food and beer.
Yeah.
And food and beer in particular, like spirits in general, are better the more people who participate. Now, James, have you ever done this with one of your blind tests or when you're with your own groups, have an all-female table on purpose?
On purpose? No, I don't think so. I think I've definitely had all-female tables, but I don't think we did that on purpose.
I've done it, and I've done it on purpose. And women gamers play games differently. And it is worth noting how this works. And it is definitely worth the time and understanding. Different people approach games differently, and letting those differences be our strength starts by recognizing what those are.
Seppy, I accept the challenge. I'm going to work on. I've got games in development, so I'm going to go seek out all female table. You should ask
Teresa. Teresa's all female group is fantastic, and
great.
They're all serious gamers. Like Teresa, made them play processing, which is hysterical considering how often cannibalism shows up in my games.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Oh, look, Teresa just said the all-women group play tested Wonderlands of War a bunch. Boom, boom. I didn't do it on purpose. That's good to know. It's good to know. I love this stuff. And in my 8-ish year career, I think I've went from somebody who had some unconscious bias that I had to kind of peel back like an onion, you know. I think I don't feel like I had anything malicious, but that doesn't mean that you don't unconsciously do, you know,
Dumb things.
dumb things that need to be offensive things, right? That need to be peeled back.
I'm old and I was in the service. So even despite my X number of flavors of marginalization, like veteran, homeless, biracial, gay, like I got them all. Like, but despite all that, like, just there's an age difference. And as an Xer, I was taught some very bad things. I was really made for the apocalypse, not necessarily for a universe where everybody is interconnected like the Lawnmower Man. And so, but how you survive your mistakes is a real big deal. We live in a culture where anybody can find out the things that you've done wrong. And ultimately, it can be very unforgiving. But we can only grow if we learn. And often we have to learn from our mistakes.
That's what teaches us the best. You know, on the job training. Well, I wish it wasn't, but it feels like it. It's something like you were saying. I mean, I was born and raised in Alabama, you know, the deep, deep Bible South. Roll Tide. And so you can only imagine some of the stuff that I had to peel back as I grew up and things that came out of my mouth and as young James. I look back and I cringe. I cringe hard.
Yes. Yeah. I cringe. I cringe. I'm glad that my youth predates the internet. I'm very glad of that.
Yes. Phones with video cameras would have been a problem.
It's a serious problem. All right. Well, we're now into the wrap up, James. You have been a fantastic guest. Everybody, thank you so much for bringing your questions to the panel or to the live.
It's a panel. It's a summit. Welcome to the summit.
It's a summit. Next week, I'm going to have Dodeca Donuts Andy back on, and we're going to talk about product design for game accessories. So, James, where can people find you, and what can people expect from you next?
I mean, if you Discord, I've moved almost everything to Discord because then I get to control what is posted there. You know, our algorithms on some of these social media sites really don't, like, I can make a post, it doesn't get presented, you don't see it. So Discord is where I spend a lot of my time. But I'm on most of them as either Druid City Games or James Matthew Hudson. Next coming up, I've got a game called Madkala that is a 1v1 game that Manny Tremblay designed and did the art for. Super excited about that. And then right after that, fingers crossed, I get to bring Bloodstone back to Kickstarter. So really excited for all that.
Because I help out at Matt Paquette. I got to see Madkala.
Yeah! I love it.
I also got to see Luthier way early. Like, I'm living vicariously through people who do this better than I do.
I think we're all doing that. We're all doing that.
That's awesome. All right, for folks who are a fan of the Wednesday Live, please make sure you like and share it for our guests and so forth. If you're interested in how games get made, or if you're interested in the recap of these, please check out Fight in the Box's long form channel. Otherwise, because of the fulfillment schedule for Conquest Princess, we will not be doing Game Hole this year, which is very unfortunate. The shipping crisis is being awful. But that being said, we will be at PAX Unplugged. Please look for things in and around the retail release of Conquest Princess, or if you're interested in joining us for playtesting, the next title after End of the Line, the one that will be crowdfunding in spring, has started making it to our playtest roundabouts. You should check it out. It is super fun. If you are fans of Mouse, Cheese, Cat, Cucumber, Hedgehog, Hop, or our other games, our fourth in the small box series is going to be our crowdfund for early next year. All right, James. Any last parting wisdom or things you'd like to tell our viewees?
Play for the grins, not the wins.
I love it. All right, as it goes every week, we'll see you next Wednesday. And everybody, please stay safe and have fun. Bye, everybody.